WFYI podcasts are made possible by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering experiences like indulging in grub at Nick's English Hut, taking a stroll along Kirkwood Avenue, feeling the history and magic of Assembly Hall, and providing the chance to feel like a college kid again. Plan your trip at visitbloomington.com.
I'm Kyle Long, host of Cultural Manifesto, just one of the local music programs you can enjoy on WFYI. These programs would not be possible without your financial support. And to say thank you, we want to send you to see Lyle Lovett when he comes to Indianapolis on July 28th. Choose a concert ticket as your gift when you donate at WFYI.org/give. And thanks for supporting WFYI.
This is WFYI News Now. It's June 13th, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, a new report shows the country's pivot to biofuels is releasing large amounts of hazardous air pollution into rural communities. Superior Court judges up for election get interviewed. And renewed federal grants for incarcerated students are giving hope to some college and prison leaders.
This work isn't just very practical, it is essential to being a full human being while inside prison.
Those stories coming up. But first, a new animal shelter is in the making for Indianapolis Animal Care Services. IACS and Mayor Joe Hogsett broke ground Monday on a new facility. The project will more than double the size of its current shelter. Plans include an improved medical clinic and lab space. Abby Brands is the director of the Department of Business and Neighborhood Services. She says the larger building will allow for more efficient operations, a better approach to medical care, and more humane treatment of the animals.
While we're certainly going to grow in capacity, I could build a shelter the size of Lucas Oil and it would be filled within a month because there's just always going to be a need for extra kennels and the volume that we're facing in Marion County and nearby counties.
The new shelter is located on the southeast side of Indianapolis, with some of the highest stray pickups in the county. The city has allocated $27 million toward the facility. Another $7 million comes from the Friends of Indy Animals. Other local organizations have given funds for the project. The shelter is expected to be completed by 2026. The United States pivot to biofuels is releasing large amounts of hazardous air pollution into largely rural communities, according to a new report. As Indiana Public Broadcasting's Lauren Chapman reports, the Environmental Integrity Project is calling for the end of biofuel subsidies and improved regulation of the industry's emissions.
The report says the biofuels industry, which includes ethanol and biodiesel from plants like soybeans, released almost as much total hazardous air pollution as oil refineries in 2022. It says lax regulations on these plants are harming the environment and communities they're in, despite the industry's greenwashing. Elliot Clay is the Land Use Programs Director at the Illinois Environmental Council. He says the federal subsidies on corn and soybeans have decimated rural communities.
The death of what a lot of people like to call small town America is largely due to the fact that the agricultural industry has become consolidated to a point that local infrastructure for processing of grains and mills and all these kind of things have disappeared.
Nearly half of the biofuels plants identified by the report as high priority violators are in Indiana. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Lauren Chapman.
The report highlighted Indiana's 17 biofuel manufacturing plants, including Alternative Fuel Solutions in Huntington and Central Indiana Ethanol in Marion. Marion County voters will have 18 Superior Court judges on their ballot in the November general election. This week, 10 incumbent trial court judges were recommended for retention after a series of public interviews. The Marion County Judicial Selection Committee asked questions, and judges talked about cases, challenges, successes, and systemic issues. Judge Jose Salinas sits on the Marion Superior Court and talked about diversity.
As far as diversity is concerned on our bench, we are second to none in this state. Some people may say, well, that's not a big achievement in terms of where we are as a whole, but as far as Marion County in the state, we should be very proud of what we've done.
Staffing issues, specifically magistrate and judge retention, was addressed by some of the justices. Judge Helen Marshall says a restructure of the way judges select magistrates should be considered.
Our local rule right now says it's discretionary, that you have a screening committee. It's discretionary as to whether or not you post it. Those should be mandatory. I think that we need a bipartisan screening committee that would vet all applicants.
Judges were also asked about community involvement. Many of them are involved in committees, volunteer work, and outreach. Marion County voters will choose yes or no for all 18 judges on their ballot in November. And for our final story today, college education programs in prison benefit those in and out of the justice system. Renewed federal grants for incarcerated students is making college and prison leaders optimistic. Aubrey Wright has more.
In May 2022, Miles Folsom became valedictorian of his class at Holy Cross College.
I decided to accept it on behalf of everyone else who ever thought that the door was shut and there was not a way out.
Now he's CEO of Invested Youth, a speakers bureau he helped create for people who've been incarcerated. He's a legal consultant for a charity, helping people create better defenses. He also works in carpentry, and he's looking for an architect to build the world's most humane prison.
I do think back on my prison experience, my Holy Cross experience, the Rural College Initiative, all the volunteer work I've done. And to be honest, it's uncanny. I really don't. It's almost like I'm talking about someone else's life.
Folsom was incarcerated as a teenager. His journey began with self-education, reading every book he could find, and keeping his father's words in mind. You have to go to college. And 8 years into his incarceration, he did that with the University of Notre Dame and Holy Cross College.
That was the beginning of a 4 or 5 year just uphill climb. It was phenomenal.
Those classes were possible through the Second Chance Pell Experiment, new funding given to a select group of prison education programs. Students in prison earned Pell Grants, the same need-based financial aid as unincarcerated students. That Second Chance Pell Experiment was successful. In 2020, Congress voted to reinstate Pell Grant use for incarcerated students for the first time since 1994. It went into effect last summer. That was great news for Justin McDevitt, who works with Notre Dame's programs for education in prison.
This work isn't just very practical, it is essential to being a full human being while inside prison.
With Notre Dame, Marion University, and Indiana's women's prison, McDevitt directs the Women's College Partnership.
They're incredible students who just need the opportunity the way that students on the outside would.
Notre Dame works with Marion University for women's programs. It also works with Holy Cross for men's programs at Westville Correctional Facility. Students pursue liberal arts, associate, and bachelor's degrees full-time. McDevitt and others with Notre Dame's prison education programs try to create a college campus within the constraints of a prison.
Imagine having an entire college, but with 40 students in 2 classrooms over the course of the week.
It's a co-curricular space, and they give students similar experiences, choices, and resources to those at other college campuses. There are fewer options than larger colleges, but students can make the most of their free college experience.
The program was given a whole floor of a building, and that was very important because it was like a sanctuary.
In the men's program, Folsom says students walked around and talked with fellow students freely. There were libraries, classrooms, a computer lab.
It was great. I couldn't have asked for probably a better setting.
In Indianapolis, the Department of Corrections and the Commission for Higher Education collaborate to review these programs for Pell funding.
And that's kind of our role, is to say, is this sustainable inside of our facilities? Is it in the best interest of the student?
That's Department of Corrections Executive Director of Programs and Re-Entry Readiness, John Mather. The U.S. Department of Education must approve the prison education programs. And this funding will support more than just students. McDevitt says it will also support faculty and staff.
It really is the only way that programs like this can be sustainable long-term.
To receive Pell funding, education programs must offer career development and re-entry support. Mather says the state is looking to approve high-quality programs that will benefit students and their communities.
These folks are going to be returning citizens. They're going to come back in our communities. They're going to be your neighbors.
Advocates such as Folsom say education is one of the most effective interventions to prevent people from reoffending.
It is us who are holding us back. And I think the way forward is education. We must educate these people so that they can help themselves.
And Folsom says feeling angry at and chasing revenge against often traumatized people in prisons prevents rehabilitation. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Aubrey Wright.
That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced the music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.
WFYI podcasts are made possible by Bloomington, Indiana, an American college town offering experiences like indulging in grub at Nick's English Hut, taking a stroll along Kirkwood Avenue, feeling the history and magic of Assembly Hall, and providing the chance to feel like a college kid again. Plan your trip at visitbloomington.com.